you, Mr Chair. And I'm very happy to speak in this debate, although there is a sense of déjà vu, because now that we've established and agreed that animals are sentient beings, it by definition means that we should be quite repulsed by the idea perhaps of keeping them in cages, when certainly that probably isn't necessary under any circumstances that I can think of. But I want to once again, in the spirit of déjà vu, thank the Honourable Lady from Bristol East for the excellent opening to the debate that she has given to us. And nothing captures the imagination or the attention or the strong feeling of our constituents than the issue of animal welfare. And it doesn't really matter what the aspect of animal welfare is. I get more, and I'm sure I'm the same as every other MP in this regard, I get more emails about animal welfare than I do about any other issue that has ever presented itself in the 5 years since I've been an MP, and quite a number of important issues have presented themselves, but nothing has excited my constituents to email me more than the issue of animal welfare. And this petition has garnered 106,000 signatures calling for the prohibition of the use of caging of animals. And ultimately, that is an animal welfare issue, because we all want to see the highest possible standards of animal welfare that can possibly be achieved and delivered for our furry friends. The Minister, of course, as I've already said to her, again, it's like déjà vu, but I've already said to her that she is well aware that in the wake of Brexit there are many concerns, there are many people who are concerned about what this will mean for animal welfare in the UK. We know that members of the SNP in the European Parliament backed the End the Cage Age campaign, and we know that the EU Parliament voted to demand a new law to protect animals, calling on national governments to roll back on intensive battery farms and to financially reward farmers who use pens instead of cages. And we've heard much about that today. And we know that the EU Commission was asked by MEPs to come forward with housing guidelines to ensure that imported animals enjoy the same welfare and food safety criteria as their domestically reared counterparts, as the Honourable Member for Coatbridge, Chryson and Bellshill indicated to us. The bottom line is that it should never be acceptable to cause any animal unnecessary suffering. And I think that's, again, something upon which we can all agree, because there's never a good reason to cause any animal unnecessary suffering. And that's why the Animal Health and Welfare Scotland Act of 2006 made this an offence. In addition, a consultation seeking views and proposals to strengthen the enforcement of animal welfare legislation by increasing the maximum available penalties, something, as I've already said, I called for since I was first elected in 2015. And it's brought forward also the use of fixed penalty notices. And that was debated at stage 1 in the Scottish Parliament only last week. And this legislation was referred to by Christine Campbell, Chief Executive of the Scottish SPCA, as exciting changes which have the potential to be transformational for animals across the country. Importantly, in this bill, the processes for making permanent arrangements for animals to be taken into possession to protect their welfare will be speeded up and will not require a court order. But cages for animals feels instinctively wrong to me, and it will feel instinctively wrong to so many people. To keep animals confined goes quite against their natural instincts, and it seems quite evidentially cruel. Around 16 million animals are confined in cages every year in the UK. And even for those owners who believe they are doing so with no real detrimental impact on the animals themselves, and many will feel that they are not harming their animals, I am sure. This is a practice with which many of us are not and should not be comfortable. How many of us have seen pictures of these huge colonies of hen farms and not instinctively recoiled? I know I have. And whilst these animals may be well fed and they may be well kept clean, it cannot make for a happy hen. How could it? And as can happen, it seems that what perhaps may be the real driver here is the attitudes and values of consumers. If government won't drive change, then they will. For example, Morrison's supermarket broke cover a couple of weeks ago and became the first major supermarket to sell only free-range eggs. Now, Morrison's is a commercial enterprise. It exists to make a profit. So the importance of this move cannot be underestimated, especially since this was a supermarket, as so many others still are, which was formerly perfectly content to stock battery-laid eggs. Supermarkets make such changes perhaps only based on what matters to their customers, and certainly this puts some pressure on other supermarkets to follow suit, which in turn puts pressures on egg producers. So ultimately, what producers want, they will in the end get by driving change through exercising their choice. Currently, for example, 60% of all eggs laid and bought in Scotland are free range. Given that consumers are becoming increasingly discerning about what they eat and the process of how it gets to their plate and how it is sourced, there is every reason to believe that this figure will rise. Morrison's is simply responding to that, and well done to them for doing so, for meeting their goal to stop selling eggs from caged hens 5 years before their target of 2025. Now, I heard what the Honourable Member for Bristol East said about waiting for consumers to drive change is simply not good enough on its own, and I would agree with that. It cannot be only about what consumers do, but the carrot and stick together are important tools. And I think, actually, maybe a year ago, there was a debate in this chamber about microbeads. And I remember saying at that point that the real driver of the change of removing microbeads from products, the real driver of that was consumer concern. The use of plastics, for example, the move away from that by retailers is based probably almost entirely on what consumers are complaining about and what they want. And therefore, the industry is in the process of following what consumers want, although admittedly slower than perhaps we would like. And I think of the chain McDonald's, which, because of concerns of consumers, did away completely with the use of plastic straws. McDonald's delivered what their consumers want. And I think of a big company like Adidas. Now, these are companies that you wouldn't normally associate with perhaps driving environmental change. But at the end of the day, they exist to make money and they will do what their customers want. And I think of the example of Adidas, which, because of consumer concerns about climate, it now creates running shoes made entirely from ocean waste. So these are small steps from huge companies, but the consumer is king, and if the consumer exercises the power that they have, they can drive really quite important and innovative change. But at the base of all this is the need to ensure that all living creatures, if we go back to the debate, all living creatures who have no voice of their own are given the best care, the most compassionate consideration we can afford them. And that's why I'm pleased that the SNP Scottish Government invests £20 million annually in supporting animal health and welfare and employing a high-skilled and qualified workforce led by Scotland's Chief Veterinary Officer. This petition, I think, is timely, and it's a bit of a wake-up call because increasingly, as a society, we are becoming more concerned about the food we eat, the creatures around us, which can often be open to exploitation, but which have no voice. We're concerned for our environment, and we have a newfound respect for the natural world as it becomes increasingly under threat. We can choose to listen to those concerns of our constituents and work with them towards the ultimate goal of ending practices such as caging animals. Or we can be dragged along by our constituents who, as consumers, will exercise the power they have to effect change. Being dragged along is never an easy prospect. It's always best to work with our constituents, with the farming and livestock industry, seeking ways to improve the quality of lives for our animals. We want our animals to be not just healthy, but happy too. So I'm hoping that the Minister will tell us what she thinks we can do better and more of to try to ensure both happiness and health of our animals.